I'm looking at the numbers. Looks like we have a good turnout already. So let's go ahead and get started. So good morning to those of you in Illinois. Good afternoon to those like me in DC. Welcome to the University of Illinois System's 2024 Town Hall on Federal Priorities. I'm Paul Weinberger, Assistant Vice President for Federal Relations, and I'm delighted to be the host for today's conversation with U of I System President Tim Killeen. We've been doing these annual town halls for 4 years now, and it's great to see that each time we have more and more people signing on. So we'll begin with a presentation from President Killeen, recapping our advocacy efforts and other highlights from the past 12 months, and also discussing our priorities for legislative and executive action this year. That will be followed by a question and answer period. Now, many of you submitted questions when you registered, so thank you very much for that. I know President Killeen will address some of them in his remarks, and we'll try to answer as many of the remaining ones as we can get to. Feel free to pose any other questions you may have using the Q&A function, and if we don't get to them today, we will plan to follow up later. With that, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the 20th President of the University of Illinois System. I will skip the full introduction because we don't have time, but I will note that President Killeen is a leading researcher in geophysics and space sciences, whose decades of service include a very senior position at the National Science Foundation. I'll also note that President Killeen, since he took office in May 2015, enrollment across the system has hit record highs, student costs have been held in check, and both capital investments and fundraising are, by all accounts, booming. President Killeen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you, Paul, and I hope you can hear me clearly. And thanks to everybody for joining us at this session. It is our 4th annual gathering to discuss University of Illinois System's federal priorities for the year ahead. So we'd like to touch on that. But it's always a pleasure, just a great pleasure to connect with our DC area alumni, advocates, and friends. So thank you again for participating in this. It's also an opportunity for me to talk about some of the many things we accomplish every year around the U of I system. And as those of you who've been here before know that there's an incurable optimism to, backing my remarks, but it's based on substantive accomplishments and contributions. It also serves as a great reminder of everything our faculty, staff, and students are doing that's worth celebrating. Much of it on behalf of the people of Illinois and the Midwest, but as well as our country as a whole and the world beyond. I hope this will leave you as proud as I am of all that has been achieved in 2023, so much of it with your help as key advocates for your university. This goes far beyond the degrees we award or the research discovery that drives much job creation and engenders human well-being. A lot to talk about in that arena. As a public university system guided by our land-grant origins, our mission includes a mandate to explore and understand challenges facing all of us that can be perplexing, difficult, painful, and even tragic at times. And so I wanted to start with a few comments. The events unfolding in Israel and Gaza and their impact on college campuses around the country is just such a challenge, and one fraught with anguish for many, if not all of us. Several of the questions you submitted in the Q&A that will follow my remarks touch directly on the situation. So I wanted to take a few moments and speak directly with you on this subject up front. We bring the spring semester at our the three universities, knowing that this directly touches so many on our campuses. There are many students, faculty, and staff, I know, experiencing real trauma. I want to reaffirm with you all that the well-being and safety of all of our students, each one from every background, our faculty and our staff, is our first priority. Let me say also unequivocally, there is no room for hate at our universities and no acceptance of anti-Semitism or Islamophobia or other discriminatory harassment practices. Our faculty, staff, and leadership work every day to live up to this responsibility. And we're taking a wide range of measures, such as increasing police patrols, meeting with student organizations that are directly impacted by the current events, while also constantly monitoring to determine whether we need to add additional safeguards or otherwise change course. At the same time as this commitment to safety and effective, healthy learning environments, we maintain our commitment to free expression and open debate. It's sometimes been suggested in these past few difficult months that in higher education, we must choose between maintaining safe environments for learning and discovery and offering a forum for the expression of debate and ideas That's a false choice, a false dichotomy. We must do both, and we are and will do both. When we go to work in higher education or enroll as students, we enter into a compact of sorts that we will agree to listen to even unpopular or uncomfortable ideas, and if we disagree, to do so with respect. Of course, this doesn't extend to hate speech or any call to harm to anyone. This compact has been tested at colleges and universities around the world over the past few months and likely will continue to be. So while we fervently hope for peace in all the world's conflict zones, we are committed to these cornerstones of our mission as a public university, providing for the well-being and safety of our students in healthy learning environments, while encouraging, stimulating, and projecting the free flow of ideas and expression that drives education, research, and discovery. Those three areas, education, research, and discovery, are the permanent core, the heart of our mission, and that is unchanging. So let me start there as we talk about some of the incredibly exciting things happening at our universities in Urbana-Champaign, Chicago, and Springfield, and beyond our three campuses as well, with many partners. You no doubt have read and heard about the enrollment challenges that many colleges and universities now face. Some talk about an enrollment cliff. I'm happy to say that at our universities, students and their families are voting with their feet, coming to our campuses in record numbers. In the fall, our three universities welcomed a historic high number of first-year freshmen, 13,231. Yes, we count them. System-wide undergraduate enrollment also set a new high mark at 60,013 students. After reaching our record total enrollment, 94,861 a year ago, our overall enrollment fell very slightly this year to 94,746. And a blip was a result of a record of its own, actually. With the wind down of the pandemic, more graduate students completed their degrees in the spring of 2023 than ever before. So even with that small enrollment decline caused by graduation of graduate students, we still have grown by 18% over the past decade. That's a big number. As I've said before, but I want to emphasize that those additional students, more than 14,000 of them, mean that we've added the equivalent of a mid-sized university to the landscape of public higher education in Illinois over the past 10 years. More access for more people means more opportunity. And with the upswing in graduates that I mentioned, helped get us a record 27,106 people earning a University of Illinois degree in 2022 to 2023. That is a graduation record as well. Over 27,000 students graduating. It's like a little town coming off the product line. And they're outfitted with the tools they need to change their own lives, support their family members, their communities, and the people who live around them. Many of them will be pursuing, and we know these opportunities in Illinois. I'm incredibly proud that so many of our graduates choose to stay in our state. Over 70% of them choose to stay in Illinois. So we're creating a workforce, a human capital at scale for our state in the Midwest. And of course, those who choose a path elsewhere are making us incredibly proud too, like so many of you here today who are making a difference in the life of the nation through your work in Washington, D.C. I'm about to travel to India, where we're meeting with hundreds of alumni there who are making their careers in another part of the world. Another key factor to accessibility and growth is, however, really important. It's affordability. And we're focused on making sure that the education, the world-class education we offer, remains affordable for students and their families. This means controlling costs and providing assistance for the deserving students who need financial aid. So we have now frozen tuition in 7 of the past 10 years. That is zero growth in tuition, 7 of the past 10 years, including a vote just last week by our Board of Trustees to lock in tuition rates and fees at current levels for in-state undergraduates who enroll this fall with a 4-year guarantee. Because of that 4-year guarantee, the state's guaranteed tuition law, the trustees' decision means that first-time freshmen and their families can plan for their undergraduate years with certainty that their tuition costs will not change. We also remain steadfastly committed to providing financial aid at levels that make a real difference in the lives of our students. Between the aid we provide on our own and federal Pell Grants, thank you for helping on that front, and state MAP grants that we strongly advocate for each year, 32% of our undergraduates and 40% of the undergraduates who are from Illinois pay no tuition or fees at all. 40% pay nothing. I'm incredibly proud of that. That's providing doors of opportunity to successful careers and building capabilities in families and communities. That is really astonishing. In all, about 3/5 of our undergraduates and 2/3 of our in-state undergraduates pay less than the full cost of their tuition and fees. Pell and MAP grants, state and federal support year after year, are real U of I advocacy success stories. We go to bat for the federal and the state financial aid. And there might be no stronger advocacy success story for us to tell than the impact friends like you can have on our ongoing success around Pell and MAP. We continue to work to increase access for underrepresented populations as well. Let me say first that the University of Illinois System's commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, which I always like to add, remains steadfast. It's a bedrock principle, one certainly made more challenging by the US Supreme Court decision last summer, striking down affirmative action, but one that nonetheless we're committed to and will not be diminished. And that's part of the questions that I've already received. So let me tell you a little bit about how we make good on that commitment. We are working increasingly closely with Illinois community colleges to smooth the path for transfer students. Community colleges, of course, provide an on-ramp to a college education for many students from all backgrounds that is less expensive and closer to home, typically, than enrolling as freshmen at a four-year university. These efforts were apparent in our enrollment figures from the fall. Our undergraduate transfer from community college, our undergraduate transfer enrollment ticked up about 0.5% across the system. And that includes transfer growth of 5.2% at Urbana-Champaign. Important new pathways that we're enlarging. We also recently began talking with 1 Million Degrees, which is a Chicago area organization created to help more young people enroll and succeed in community college, about ways we can partner. And we're expanding system-wide recruiting events like our Salute to Academic Achievement, the most recent held in Chicago, drawing 450 talented Chicago students, most people of color and their families. These kinds of events are work, it's shoe leather, but they're incredibly important to students who in many cases may not believe that college is for them. And they don't think of our universities sometimes as even remote possibilities. It's on us to change that outlook. Another key initiative is what we call Access 2030, which is our initiative aimed at increasing the number of graduates from underrepresented groups by 50% by the end of the decade. And this will include students from disadvantaged backgrounds, ethnic, racial, rural, and urban. We've also launched a system-wide task group for Access 2030, which is making progress as it considers key areas of focus such as affordability, which I've already mentioned, equity, retention, and our retention rates are really stellar, graduation, campus climate, and inclusion. We know we have more work to do to open the doors to young people and non-traditional learners who have the aptitude that can gain benefit from our world-class education. But we're making great strides, which will help us even in the context of the SCOTUS findings. Let me add one more point that I'm proud of. Between our 3 universities, we now have students from each of Illinois' 102 counties. Making certain our impact reaches all of our state is incredibly important as well. We spoke last year about our leadership team, and this remains an area of both strength and stability. I'm incredibly proud of them. Our chancellors are the best in the business. Since we spoke, Marilyn Miranda officially assumed the leadership role at UIC, and boy, has she hit the ground running. She has big, ambitious plans to build on UIC's place in Chicago its position as the state's only urban public research university, and its deep prowess in medicine and healthcare. Chancellor Janet Gooch has now led 2 consecutive years of very healthy enrollment growth at UIS. And of course, as Urbana continues to steam ahead as one of the country's premier public universities, it's under the leadership of national icon and my friend, Chancellor Robert Jones, who is also in his 8th year or 7th or 8th year. I really consider myself fortunate to call on these 3 colleagues and friends. The Discovery Partners Institute, as you know, our flagship initiative on economic development, has been steadily building and acting on its mission to drive applied R&D, to build businesses, to create new jobs, and to develop tech talent for Chicagoland and beyond tech's ecosystem. And in 2023, as you'll see, it really picked up steam. Last year, DPI research was driven by $70.4 million in grants, more than 2/3 of those grants federally funded. So thank you for your help on that score. DPI was also part of 42 new projects with industry, including working on local solutions to help mitigate climate change. Just one example, DPI is part of 2 initiatives with Commonwealth Edison, including an effort that uses precision tree planting to ease the impacts of high heat on urban areas, and the development of a climate education curriculum for the company's field offices. That's a public-private partnership. Also last year, work at DPI led to 52 new inventions, helped those inventions that were the subject of disclosures, the first critical step towards a patent. DPI's impact on tech talent development continues to expand too. Over the year, DPI worked with 750 K-12 students, a number that will grow and grow in the years ahead, and 200 teachers who will in turn reach many, many more students. So we're working on the supply chain of talent, as hopefully they come through our universities, but even if they don't, participate in society in important ways. Another 58 learners completed 12-week apprenticeships through DPI. I'm also incredibly pleased to say that DPI co-hosted High Tech CHI, a day-long event at Google's Chicago offices for hundreds of students and their families from across the city that included Mayor Brandon Johnson, other city leaders, and tech luminaries. One more major milestone that's coming in the next few months, DPI's South Loop headquarters in the 78 will break ground. DPI, of course, is the crown jewel of our newly 4-year-old now Illinois Innovation Network, IIN, and IIN's impact, creating opportunities and solving problems all over our state, is unprecedented as a model for other states, continues to grow through its network of hubs. Multiple IIN hubs joined the Midwest Alliance for Clean Hydrogen project. For example, the project is using $1 billion from the Department of Energy to create a clean hydrogen economy across Illinois, Michigan, and Indiana. And through IIN hubs, all of the public universities, many community colleges are involved in building the workforce and the R&D capacity for a future clean hydrogen economy. The ABE Link project, led by the Chicago State University Hub, is expanding broadband access, distributing laptops, and improving digital literacy through a team of community navigators. And IIN funding research drove the creation of an Illinois Soybean Association program known as Broadband Breakthrough. Run that by Broadband Breakthrough to help rural counties develop plans for federal broadband funding. It's very important to provide access to the internet across our state. IIN is also growing partnerships with government agencies to increase its impact. In 2023, IIN worked with the State Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunities Reimagining Electric Vehicles Initiative, and provided workforce training based on the digital economy for inmates at 4 federal prisons under the Bureau of Prisons Partners for Reentry Opportunities and Workforce Development Program. So our work there is expanding and multifaceted in many areas, and those are just a few examples. Over the past year, we've really ramped up our efforts to build productive new international partnerships for the benefit of the U of I system, and in so much of what we do, the benefit of Illinois. As we all know, globalization may be fraying around the edges, but we're driving what I think of as intellectual, authentic globalization through partnerships around the world. And the extent to which we live in an interconnected world is only going to accelerate. To compete globally, we also must absolutely partner globally. Example, after visiting Taiwan in March with a delegation of the U of I system leaders, we signed a new agreement with National Tsinghua University there to create student and faculty exchanges and conduct joint research in semiconductors, biomedicine, electric vehicles, material science, and Chinese language education. In December, we further strengthened our ties in Taiwan by joining with National Taiwan University to create new interdisciplinary research teams focused on, amongst other things, 3D integrated computer memory, mental health support for individuals with autism, and the impact of fungicides on antimicrobial resistance for foodborne pathogens. Just examples, we actually all 12 research universities in Taiwan are now partners, formal partners with us. Just a few weeks ago, we also created a new partnership with El Colegio de Veracruz in Mexico, a small university heavily focused on the arts and humanities. And I'm really eager to see where this new bond leads and how it builds on the office that we formally opened in Mexico City at UNAM in 2022. Let me also mention another example. DPI last year forged a new partnership with the National University of Singapore, which will see 2 new NUS programs open in DPI's Chicago offices. I'm excited by that too. I mentioned our trip to India, but we're working with Germany, with Brazil, which is amazing opportunities there. So we're working on intellectual globalization in authentic partnering ways on important R&D and scientific and arts and humanities projects. So if you've been recently to any of our universities, you know that building and renewal is never ending on our campuses. So some of you may have graduated a long time ago. Come stop by and you'll see a lot of changes. Just a few examples. In Urbana, construction is well underway on Stephen S. Weimer Hall, which will expand our capacity and reach of the Geese College of Business. Very exciting development. Stephen Weimer is an alumnus, and the new building he's helping fund includes a 200-seat auditorium and 6 new classrooms. In support of the college's online programs, Weimer Hall also includes 2 sound stages, 5 studios, and 6 control booths. Driven by the growing demand, I would say, for computer science education, Chicago's new Computer Design Research and Learning Center is expected to be complete during the next academic year, another wonderful addition to our campus in Chicago. This new 135,000 square foot CDRLC will give UIC's growing computer science program a new unified home. And in Springfield, construction is now expected to begin in 2024 on the Library, Learning, and Student Success Center. So each of our universities is being upgraded and updated with modern facilities. I'd like to turn now to a closer look at our federal engagement. And it begins with Paul, who you've met just now, Colin Kerr, and their colleagues in our Office of External Relations and Communications. They work tirelessly to advance our agenda in Washington, urging Congress to fund critical needs such as student aid that makes college education possible for many, as well as key research projects. And there's a lot of opportunity now in the federal research domain. I mentioned Pell Grants earlier, and they remain one of the most important pieces of the financial aid picture at our universities. Across the U of I system, more than 1/5 of our students, 20,890 this year, rely on Pell Grants to help pay for their education. It's really incredibly important. I'm happy to say that this year our Pell students are receiving a combined $109.2 million, which is an increase of 3% over last year. Federal aid, financial aid is incredibly important, and it's great to see it grow. Federal appropriations for FY 2023, in fact, provided a $500 increase in the maximum Pell Grant award that we've been advocating strongly for. This is the largest increase in more than a decade and one of our top priorities. So please, many of you have been involved, please give yourselves a pat on the back. Advocacy on the part of higher education really does pay off and transforms lives. Fellows chosen for our President's Executive Leadership Program, known as PELP, have also proven to be excellent advocates for the U of I system during the seminars they attend in Washington, D.C. PELP is a year-long program for senior level administrators and members of the faculty from across the system who have high potential and interest in leadership roles. And I'm smiling a bit because PELP has led to university presidents in South Carolina, Iowa, Massachusetts, etc. So we're taking kind of over, maybe not in an obvious way, leadership in flagship universities around the country through this executive leadership program and other efforts. PELP fellows regularly engage with members of Congress and important agencies such as NSF and NIH. And last year, they also visited the Supreme Court. So we're present in Washington, D.C. We also enjoy strong relationships with leaders and top administrators from federal agencies who regularly visit our universities. And this is often in conjunction with the announcement of federal funding for an important new project. Other visits reflect our standing in important areas of research and education or influence in our communities. Just last July, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Senator Dick Durbin, and Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski were on our Urbana campus, for example, to engage with university leaders, faculty, and students on transportation research projects and initiatives. Amongst other things, it was a great chance to celebrate a new $2 million DOT-funded University Transportation Center led by Urbana's Granger College of Engineering. And I'm delighted to say, in partnership with the UK, we've also received about $10 million to study sustainability in transportation. This one, though, at Granger, known as TransIPIC, is a consortium that's working to improve the durability and extend the life of transportation infrastructure by advancing technologies such as precast concrete systems. And as you all know, Illinois is a centerpiece for logistics in the country, multimodal transportation. So on transportation, logistics, materials, trucking, all of those things, we have an incredible leadership position here. In November, UIC hosted the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director, Dr. Mandy Cohen. Dr. Cohen came to Chicago and toured UI Health facilities, as well as a vaccination clinic, as part of a drive to urge Chicagoans to get the latest COVID-19 and flu vaccines. Around the same time last fall, the UVI system hosted a breakfast on Capitol Hill for leaders from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, including Undersecretary Chavonda Jacobs-Young and nine members of the Illinois Congressional Delegation. I think that's a majority of the Illinois Congressional Delegation. This was a great chance for everybody involved to learn more about the system's extensive partnerships with USDA. So we're working with leadership and federal agencies. Over the past year, we also engaged in a number of ways back here in Illinois with members of the congressional delegation itself. We hosted breakfasts in the Chicago suburbs with Representative Sean Casten and Raja Krishnamurthy. Each was an opportunity for the congressmen to talk to our alumni about important issues in DC. I'm also pleased that Representative Chuy Garcia attended the ribbon cutting at the new Pilsen Center for Oral Health Production that we opened this year. Representative Garcia helped secure funding for the center, which is a partnership involving the UIC College of Dentistry to provide dental care, much needed dental care for an underserved area in Chicago. All of these and similar kinds of events help build relationships with elected leaders and others in the nation's capital. And these relationships, as you know, really matter, helping drive our research at our universities and innovations that, as you all know, continue to change how we live and promote economic prosperity, health, and well-being. So we're not just reactive on all of these fronts, we are proactive and engaged. System-wide federal research awards accounted for $673.5 million of our research spending for FY22. That's more than half of the $1.21 billion we devoted to research for the year. With our statewide economic impact of $19 billion and our own system, $7 $0.8 billion system, the $1.2 billion of extramural funding is incredibly important for our state, for our students, for our faculty. And this money is at work on projects in tech, in agriculture, healthcare, transportation, energy, and so much more. So let me give you a few examples of research underway. I'm excited to say that UIC Research, for the first time, again, a historic high, topped $500 million in research awards in 2023. And almost 3/4 of that, $509 million, came from federal agencies. UIC is a research powerhouse. Just a couple of examples. UIC's College of Medicine will use nearly $4 million from the NIH to lead one of 6 NIH study sites developing new molecular technologies and data science strategies to understand links between environmental exposures, diabetes, and chronic kidney disease. And 3 UIC faculty members last year began development of a national consortium of 7 academic institutions to educate the next generation of quantum engineers. Our leadership role in quantum science education, work financed by $4.8 million from the Department of Energy. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm announced that the Energy Department will commit an incredible $120 million to continue funding the Urbana-led Center for Advanced Bioenergy and Bioproducts Innovation. It's known as CABI and is just one of 4 bioenergy research centers in the country. Related to this $120 million reinvestment in CABI, Urbana is now the #2 university in the country for DOE expenditures and is a national model for deploying clean energy technology at scale. In May, the NSF awarded almost $20 million to establish the Inclusive and Intelligent Technologies for Education Institute in the College of Education in Urbana. INVITE, as it's known, will pursue interdisciplinary research in AI, the learning sciences, and psychology, very multidisciplinary leadership role. The NSF also awarded $30 million last year to establish a science and technology center in quantitative cell biology in Urbana. This is a very healthy record of federal funding for pioneering and cutting-edge research. 2023 was a busy year for U of I system advocates, for our federal relations team, and for you and others like you who are so loyal alums and friends. We paid close attention to the Department of Education's implementation of the new FAFSA form that was required under FAFSA Simplification Act of 2020. When it became clear that there would be delays for the rollout, we're advocating for a re-simplification of FAFSA and helping and joining the higher ed community in expressing some concerns about the impact it would have on our students and families, and underscoring the importance of ensuring a smooth transition to the full understanding and participation in financial aid. This is still an issue we're watching closely. The federal relations team also worked closely with faculty and congressional partners to provide input on several pieces of legislation. Most notably, perhaps, we worked to strengthen bills reauthorizing the Weather Act and the National Quantum Initiative Act to ensure that they appropriately reflect U of I system priorities. Illinois Connection also put out an urgent call to action in August and September for advocates like you to lend your voices to our efforts on behalf of funding for federal financial aid, research priorities, and other critical areas. Thank you, thank you, thank you for supporting those efforts. I think this is a once-in-a-generation moment for federal support to reestablish competitive leadership in the United States, and we're part of that. And we obviously want our fair part of that, but maybe even our unfair part of that because of our amazing assets that we bring to the table through partnerships as well. We also, in DC, made certain that our priorities were well known in the ongoing negotiations over the Farm Bill, which is also obviously of importance to us in Illinois. As Congress begins its new session, Paul, Melissa, and colleagues from elsewhere in the U of I system are turning their attention to our top priorities for the coming year. And this is where you can make a real difference. We really need your voices. As before, we counted on you to help make our case, or comment on our case to help it make the case better, a better case. the Farm Bill is again high on our list, since the current extension only runs through the end of September. The Farm Bill provides funding for agricultural research in Urbana, the most important work that answers the questions about how we will feed a growing global population, maintaining a vital plank in the economy of Illinois and the Midwest, and to do all of this sustainability. And I'm delighted to say we're going to do this in partnership with Brazil, which is the Southern Hemisphere's equivalent. One vital need is found in many of our facilities in Urbana. Much of the history of modern agriculture has been written in these labs and greenhouses. The legacy is astonishing, including for the Green Revolution. But many of them are overdue for maintenance and updates, which is why we have been pushing for ag research infrastructure funding, and we hope to seek and gain your help with that. U of I extension funding for programs that touch lives of people in every county in Illinois is also heavily dependent on the Farm Bill. With the FY 2024 appropriations process still dragging on, we will continue working to encourage robust spending levels for financial aid, research funding, and more in this fiscal year and the next. And I believe that together, working in this advocacy, we've been successful, and that success is paying off in the lives of our many thousands of students. A couple of weeks ago, a mini Higher Education Act reauthorization bill was introduced called the College Cost Reduction Act. Our universities are reviewing this sweeping legislation, which largely relates to student financial aid and accountability. We'll continue to give it a deep review, but we do have initial concerns about several provisions that might eliminate borrowing options and campus-based aid. We will also continue to make the case for the importance of international partnerships and make sure that the US remains the top destination for students and scholars from around the world. So I know I threw a lot at you very quickly, but I want to thank you for this opportunity to directly connect with you and recognizing the importance that you represent for our university and its place in the nation. I thank you for the opportunity to discuss our priorities as we begin 2024. Now I look forward to questions that you have had and might have in real time.
Thank you very much, President Killeen. We have about 20 minutes or so for questions. As I mentioned, we've already gotten a number of them, so let's jump right in. In a few cases, we received questions on related topics, so in order to be efficient, I'm going to try to package them together. First question, actually, a number of questions relating to how the U of I system is addressing the hot topic of artificial intelligence. President Killeen, do you want to answer that?
Well, a great question. Thanks for that question. I would say vigorously with the combination of an amazing legacy in developing capabilities in computational science, computer science, and particularly in AI across our system, UIC, UIUC. But there are some specific wins that we've had that really demonstrate the leadership issue. As everybody knows, there are opportunities, very significant ones with AI. There are also challenges, ethical and otherwise, about use and abuse. But on the opportunity side, UIUC leads 3 of the nation's NSF AI institutes. Talk about unfair participation. Well, I won't mention that. 3 of the group focused on agriculture, STEM learning, and molecular synthesis. So we have a very, very strong leadership position in research around AI's contributions to these really critically important areas, learning, agriculture, and molecular synthesis. UIUC also has a Center for AI Innovation. It leads Delta AI for the nation's research community and co-leads something called C3 AI Digital Transformation Institute. So I would say we're all over this on the research side. We have an online master's program in AI and machine learning. DPI has multiple teams applying AI already to different areas from health to infrastructure. Drone research, where drones come in and look at bridges and whether they need to be fixed. There are challenges, though, in AI that you can't underestimate. Yes, the horse is out of the barn. It needs to be ridden ethically, I guess. And I think we're important in that leadership arena. There are implications for research, for teaching, learning, and the workforce. that are going to have to be monitored carefully and managed carefully, with maybe some job categories being displaced by AI. There are inherent ethical concerns as well, and a potential for misuse in many regards. We have experts working in those areas, as well as in how do we deploy it in these different areas. So as an institution of higher education at the leading edge of computer science and deployment of AI systems, I feel like we have an obligation to adapt, teach, and utilize these new AI tools. We can't ignore them. We have to use them, much as I guess when the slide rule was invented, people had to adjust. This is a whole new family of tools. And just to give you one thing, I'm personally worried about, if AI becomes like an averaging of knowledge on the internet, leading to other insertions in the internet, you're getting potentially averages of averages of averages, and what could become a little bit of even a dumbing down of what's online. That I think we've got to pay attention to unanticipated and consequences of this revolution, but it's happening fast. We've got the experts, and we're talking about it daily. Thank you for that question. I hope that it's not a full answer of what we're specifically going to do, but we're on it.
Thank you for that. So we also received a number of questions relating to the impact of the Students for Fair Admission Supreme Court decision, banning consideration of race in admissions decisions. In fact, I saw we had at least one question come in while you were speaking. I know you did address this a bit in your remarks, but can you talk about that impact?
Yeah, obviously we kind of were tracking that carefully. We assumed that there might be this decision, so we've had teams working on this for a long time. Our admissions process has always been holistic. We now are following the law, of course. We're not using race as a specific issue in admissions decisions. We retain our commitment to building a diverse body on the students, faculty, and staff, and diversity in its broadest sense, lived experiences, urban, rural, in its broadest sense, and certainly underrepresented communities that may not have the advantages that others have. So we will continue to fulfill this commitment. We have grown our diverse participation significantly, and we now do need to accelerate. It's going to take shoe leather, going to schools, talking to people, marketing, advertising. We do an annual road tour where we visit places where some communities may not know about the financial aid opportunities, for example. So there are things we can do to expand our impact and our visibility in communities. So we've made, as I mentioned, I think we've had a 58% increase in participation over the past decade. We're not going to go backwards. Looking at African American Black students, for example, our current enrollment is 7,134. I've got it written down in front of me. A number we've increased by 28.5% over the past 10 years. I talked about Access 2030. We're looking at doubling the graduation rate of Black students by 2030. That's an ambitious goal. And we're talking about graduation, not kind of coming in as a freshman. So retention, progress, all of those things. We're going to continue to build on that process. Let me just give you a quick example of the kinds of things we can do. We went to a high school in Proviso East during the road tour this year, and it's a high school. It's got a very diverse student population. I learned firsthand that they didn't know about some of our financial aid opportunities. I learned firsthand that some of their likely student, college-ready students had not been on any of our campuses. So last week or the week before, we had 100 students in that high school visit the campus, kind of kick the tires of higher education, see, and I gather, and I'm looking at the pictures, I think it was a very successful thing. We need to be present in communities, and that's why we do this annual road tour. This last year, we did 1,300 miles up and down the state, in and out of, businesses, church groups, community colleges, high schools, chambers of commerce, to really, express that this is a path that can be feasible for you and your family. And, I think we've got a lot to talk about. At UIC, 47% of the students are first in their family to enter higher education. So we've got strong presence in this arena. We're going to build it. It's going to take more energy, more commitment, and we're committed to do that too. And being present is important. But we will follow the rules and the law, obviously, in all dimensions. Because now consideration of race is banned in admissions decisions.
Thank you for that. Switching topics, we had a question about whether there will be an institutional response to the White House Women's Health Research Initiative. I love this question because it's very timely.
Okay, yeah, that is quite timely because earlier this month we had a visit from First Lady Jill Biden. It was kind of announced a day or two only before, but she visited UIC on this topic to promote that very initiative and her visit aimed to highlight the importance of advancing research on women's health, and it featured the work of one of our UIC professors, Professor Mackey, Pauline Mackey, who's renowned for her research in menopause and cognition, and Representative Lauren Underwood, Robin Kelly were there. The Cook County Board president was there, and it was at UIC, and it was on this very topic that came up in this question. I'd like to kind of broaden maybe the question a little bit in what are we doing for public health, just generally? And I think it's true to say that we have challenges and opportunities in all these domains that we need to step up to work on. Women's health is a big thing. Pediatric dentistry is a major source of opportunities. Obviously teaching, and we're the biggest or the second biggest institution for Latino physicians. So we need to populate the healthcare enterprise with talent. And I could give a long list of the dentists and pharmacists and the percentages that we populate. But when you look around the state, you will see differences in life expectancy that are driven by zip code. I think we've all read articles on this. And if you ask the question, why? It's access to nutrition, it's access to educational opportunity and jobs, it's maternal mortality, it's traffic safety, it's violence, it's drug abuse, etc. It's many things that in one way or another are in our intellectual wheelhouse for a big land grant system. Since we're everywhere in the state, we want to work on that. And women's health is part of that broader. We've had some retreats on this topic. What can we do for public health? And those of you who've been paying attention to what we did during COVID know that when we gear up, boy, do we gear up. We were in every school in the state, right, with testing methodologies, kind of developed the test to stay that kept the classes running and allowed the parents to stay at work. I could go on about that. So we have street cred, let's put it that way, in public health at scale. And now, maybe absent a global crisis like we had with the pandemic, we need to sort of take on these avenues. And they're very intellectually challenging arenas. But it was great to have First Lady Biden at the UIC campus. I was unable to attend, so I wasn't there in person, but I believe it was in our robotic surgery lab facility. So it was like a combination of this great research into women's health, but also the cutting edge of robotic surgery equipment. And of course, we got wonderful surgeons there too that are kind of internationally renowned. So thank you for the question. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you. Let me see. We had a couple questions that were submitted about how we address political dysfunction and overcome the gridlock in Washington. I know that question has come up in past town halls too. So,
okay,
would you like to take that one again?
Okay. So first thing to say is we are not a partisan entity, right? The thing we are fervently partisan about is our students, right? No matter where they come from, what they look like, where they sound, what their political affiliations are, we care about our students and their path forward, but we're apartisan on everything else. And as you've heard, we work with officials at the state and federal levels, both sides of the aisle, regularly to advocate for students and important research that we conduct for society. And we have great working relations with and thanks to you, Paul, and your team, with the federal congressional delegation. We work closely with them continuously, Republicans and Democrats. And I like to think that we're in a way modeling how to get past partisan divisions that stall out progress, because that's not who we are, nor do we, by focusing on policy issues and authentic contributions that can provide, information and data to elucidate the debates in Washington, D.C. So I'm personally of the belief that higher education, is the antidote to everything that ails society, in terms of building capacity, building knowledge, building human capital, solving problems. Some people argue that higher education, but I think public trust in the U of I system is going up, not down. But we're seeing alarming trends perhaps elsewhere. We're seeing public trust, and it's because we've kept our costs down, we've opened our doors wide, we're doing things like COVID, we're working on important things. I think public trust is key to making progress on a polarized landscape. I think we've got a lot to bring to bear without. The other thing that I just feel that we need to do is not to adopt coded language that immediately sends signals of, you're in one camp or the other camp. And we try to use English in authentic ways rather than get caught up in language that might become politicized or could be seen as polarizing, that you said that, so you're either building a barricade or tearing another one down. So it's not that we refrain from commentary or the hurly-burly of debate, but I think we have a special role. And maybe that's me. I voted with my feet to be in higher education. But I think public trust and confidence, credibility is really important. And that's why our partnerships beyond just ourselves, other entities, community colleges, et cetera, is an important signal that we're not just here for our own benefit and self-aggrandizement. I think that's a signal that I really hope you all agree that we manifest. And if we don't, let us know, kick the shin, and we'll fix it. Yeah.
Thank you. We have time for one or maybe two more questions. We'll see. Next up, another topical question. How will the U of I respond to employers who are interested in specific skills, but not necessarily degrees?
That's a great question. And we've been thinking a lot about that. Obviously, DPI and IAN are, through the apprenticeship programs, through our training of middle school, giving them, exposure to tech. We're thinking, I think, more expansively about what society needs. Yes, we have a 4-year degree option, we have masters, and we've got all of that, and that's kind of core to our mission. But we recognize, and actually connecting this back to the AI, there are going to be important opportunities for the trades to migrate into a 21st century economy. There'll be new categories of jobs and older categories of jobs that may not. We need to help create those jobs and to provide the talent to fill those jobs, and not just for degree granting. And so we're working hard on this, actually. And I've mentioned, we have the Pritzker Tech Talent Lab at DPI. That's not a degree granting entity. It's focusing on those skills and competencies that we know through surveys that the private sector needs and wants. They also want flexibility, so they can be upskilling and reskilling and training and so forth. It's also under IIN, we're leading something we call WEX, and that stands for the Workforce Education Exchange. And it's a statewide effort to create the workforce to map into the future work needs. And they don't stop at or automatically include only degree granting things. I think there's great promise for this in ensuring a diverse, skilled, job-ready workforce in Illinois that cuts across all of the openings there. Obviously, our partnerships with community colleges, again, are key for this. Our interface with the private sector. We just did a survey, I think it was about 150 companies, like the top 50 companies in Illinois and more, to find out what their tech needs for hiring really were, and trying to map that into the kind of family of products. I think the bottom line is we have to be more flexible than we've been in the past. We have to be more expansive in our thinking. We need to recognize that, it's not just arrival of college-ready students 4 years later, the graduation ceremony. We need to be working on the whole supply chain in our business enterprise, and also then on the upskilling, reskilling, and the education perhaps of people who have partial credit that have not finished but may now have time. Distance education is going to be incredibly important for all of this. And of course, we're a powerhouse for online education on so many dimensions. UIC is now ranked #1, I believe, for undergraduate education online. We've got the IMBA in Urbana. That's like a massive success for a low-cost MBA program. So I think that's it's a great question. I think it's an important question for the long-term future of the land grant. Frankly, it's that central to who we are and what we need to be.
Thank you. We're almost at the top of the hour, but I think we have time for just one last question. It's kind of a fun one. President Killeen, what's keeping you up at night? What's top of mind as you look to the new year for the U of I system?
Okay. So I've heard that question before, and I got a colleague, Avijit Ghosh, who has a great answer. So I'm ascribing it to him, but let me give you his answer, okay? When he's asked what keeps you up at night, he says, "Oh, I sleep like a baby. I wake up every hour," and it's kind of like a funny take on that. The question kind of implies that I, as a leader, am focused on the negative threat domain, right? And actually, I'm such an incurable optimist that I'm normally dreaming about what could be, right? And maybe I hope you've heard a little bit of that here. Yes, we have challenges, we have threats. Public trust and confidence is something that in our central enterprise, higher ed, right? It's added value to society. And that's why we publish economic output, the $19 billion, our impact on the state's economy. It's very important that we actually manifest, attest to, and demonstrate the impact that our work has. So we think a lot about that. We think about where we should go. And just recently, I think graphically. So often I have sort of pictures. I'm a builder of gadgets, so maybe that's why. But I think in the last 10 years, with our growth in enrollments, our research capacity, facilities, and the public trust that we can show has been building, it's in our own situation, and our scale and our partnerships. I think we've been scaffolding what I like to think of as a platform that didn't exist before, right? We have another level of capacity and capability as a university system through partnerships. And so the question is, look what we did with COVID, like international impact. What can we do with that platform? Now, my research was in space science, right? So I don't call it a launch pad, though. I call it a platform. So where do we take that with this, focusing on the opportunities and the importance and the impact of what higher education brings to the table in an authentic, generous way? That's the question I'd like to leave on the table, because if any of you got ideas, thoughts, yeah, we have a platform for performance. Let's use it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think we filled the hour. Thank President Killeen. Thank you, President Killeen, for joining us, for speaking to us. I want to thank everyone else who signed in as well. And please, all of you, stay in touch and continue your advocacy for the U of I throughout 2024 and beyond. Thank you again.
Thank you, everybody.